at the end of the day, the issue is that commissions have always been negotiable. I've made a few videos on this. Like, they always have been. It just wasn't perceived by the general public, and those I call them bad actors, which are in every business, took advantage of that. Hey, we're fixed at this. That's not true. What you pay me and what you pay the other side is completely negotiable. Is this the end of agency? Absolutely not. It'll be the end of the bottom 30%, which I'm pretty excited about, because those people do need to go away. And it's just it's people who don't provide value, where previously marketing their services is free, which you cannot do.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today, we're talking to Jake Asher with Team Freedom. Jake is just let me make sure I get this right, because Jake's a stud. He's a 15-year veteran in real estate investing. He's actually one of the top agents in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. So, Jake, thank you for being here.
I appreciate the opportunity, James.
Well, I'm excited to have you. Jake has been a long-time friend of mine, and he's kind of one of my go-to guys when I've got some questions. But let's start. Tell us a little bit about, I know you, obviously, but let's talk a little bit about you. Let's talk about your background a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, so I am from the land of cheese. I'm a country boy from Wisconsin, and that is my upbringing is pretty country lifestyle. That's why I really like Texas. Did 21 years in the Army, finished my career as a paratrooper, and I enjoyed that. Retired in 21, and have been able to really accelerate my business. Since then, an agency for about 7 years now. Okay. So, but I've really enjoyed it.
So I have to question the sanity with regards to paratrooping, but that's okay. I'm a former tanker, so I stay on the ground. But tell me why real estate? How did you get into real estate? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so I've always been interested in home. I was lucky enough I purchased my first home in Afghanistan. Like, we signed for it in Afghanistan. So wow. I had a power of attorney. Thank goodness he's a good friend that didn't rip me off, but I signed him full power of attorney, and we closed it before I even got home. And that to me is like the things that you can possibly do. And this was the very bottom, 2009, early, like March. So like the bottom of the market. And I saw that change, by 2013, everything looked really good. And I was like, wow, I think there's something to this. I was a banker, had some banker friends that we, started putting some money together and actually buying some rentals. They were selling houses in Watauga for $65,000. Like,
well, I remember,
I
started, I remember
it was nuts. So we did some risky things, but we're able to, put a small portfolio together and go from there. And then I was like, this is really something you can see in the long term, the benefits of this. It's worth some of the headaches, and it's just worth doing.
Okay, well, that kind of got into my next piece, because I was curious. I'm always curious when you get a real estate investor that's an agent, also a real estate agent, which came first, the agent or the investor? But it sounds like you start off on the investor side.
Investor side first, and again, it's just I was a banker. And it was really convenient. We saw this stuff happening. We watched people literally walk away from their homes, and we're like, there's something to this. These prices are just too low. Let's see what we can put together. And that's why that came first. And then only after several years doing this, I'm like, I think I could fit this bill. My personality type fits the bill. So let's make a go of this.
Well, and obviously your track record has proven that concept with regards to your success. So, on the let's talk a little bit about your portfolio, because I know every investor kind of has their own personal preferences: single family, multifamily, commercial, whatever. Mm-hmm. I personally, I'm a little more on the single family. Well, not a little more. I'm strictly on the single family side. So let's talk about yours and kind of what you prefer. What do you like to have in your portfolio?
Well, so, single family is where almost everybody starts, and right. They generally move to commercial at some point, and it's just an element of spreading that risk out a little bit. When you have more than one unit, your vacancy risk is much less. So that's why people generally go from a portfolio of single families, and then they're able to get enough equity to lend on, commercial deals are generally larger, so they're more expensive, and it's really hard to have the capital and to get into commercial lending without some real previous good experience. So everybody starts there, and I think it's the best place to start. And I mean, we still got a couple houses, you know. I mean,
Right.
they're great, they cash flow, but moving into the storage, specifically an RV park place, is a way that we can spread that risk out. But I mean, they're being massively overbuilt right now, so that's a risk in the future. But anyway, so every asset class has its risks.
Right.
But it's a great place to start, single family.
No, and I agree, because that's kind of where we start. And it's, I will say, it's kind of become my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So even my wife has kind of questioned me about, hey, are we getting a little too comfortable here? Maybe we need to start looking at maybe some multifamily stuff. So I definitely agree. But, and especially in our area, I know the RV park, it seems like every time somewhere in our area, somebody's building another RV park. So, So Jake, one of the questions I get on a regular basis is there a benefit, or do you have to be an investor? Do you have to be a real estate agent? So with that, let me ask you, do you think there's value? Does it benefit you? If so, how so? What do you think?
So I feel there's tremendous value to that. You're oftentimes, because of where you're at in licensing, you're going to be privy to more deals. Now, that being said, I also know a fair amount of investors who are absolutely not interested in becoming an agent, because, there's fiduciary responsibility,
Yes.
and that can be a concern too. So I mean, I don't. I purchase deals generally not from clients, just so we don't ever cross the lines there. We'll buy from a wholesaler. We'll buy from somebody who is going direct to buyer, and kind of go about it that way. But at the end of the day, because I'm an investor too, we have a full spectrum of solutions. Like, I go into plenty of knockdowns and say, hey, look, we can unload this in 12 days. Or less. I've had literally somebody come to me like, hey, on Monday, my house goes to auction tomorrow. So,
Right.
and I was able to call somebody. We got the attorney involved, wired him some money. Like, at the end of the day, that seller was taken care of. But I don't think without that experience, there's no way we could have gotten. The average person would be like, too bad for you. I mean, really.
Well, in that scenario, as if you're just the investor, if you're not in a position to make a move on the house, you can't help them. And this industry, the real estate, is very much about relationships and helping. And for me, it's very much service orient, which I love.
Absolutely.
But I agree. I think as investors, we get a benefit by being a real estate agent. There's some information. I don't want to say inside information, but you're a little more privy to the way things function. It does add, to me, it adds a little bit of an extra burden in the sense because of the fiduciary responsibility. But it's kind of cool to be able to go to a client and say, hey, listen, we've got a couple of options here.
Yes.
I know you're in a bind. So if you need us to move this quickly, there's a way for us to move this quickly because we have those connections. But if you want to maximize how much you're making off of this, let's put it on the market and let's get it turned that way. So to me, I think it's a benefit. So
I agree.
I don't think it's required, but I do think there's value. So I want to get into a couple other things. And one of these is going to surprise you a little bit. So I'm fixing to take a left on you.
Awesome.
Because it just hit me. But let's talk about the Dallas-Fort Worth market first. So tell me what you think, where your perspective on the market, where you see it going, how do you see it? Is it still going to, because right now it's one of the top markets in the country, still, even in spite of the high interest rates. So tell me, what are you thinking about the market?
I just think you can't, much like in finance, you don't fight the Fed. You can't really fight the growth here. And that's why, I feel this is a phenomenal position to acquire assets anywhere in DFW. Well, not anywhere, but if you're tactical and smart on picking location, because it's the one never rewritten rule of real estate is location. But outside of that, I mean, the growth, you can't fight that. I mean, the net gain is, over 300 people a day here now, and we're approaching 8 million if we're not above that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the density is going to increase, and they're just it's an oversimplification, but the jobs are coming to Texas. People need to fill those jobs. People need houses. So at the end of the day, whether it's a stick house or an apartment or something, they RV, they need a place to live, and there is no slowing of jobs moving to DFW, Austin, Houston, the major markets, San Antonio. So we're just positioned so well, and it's hard not to be bullish, and I have to kind of check myself, like, am I being too optimistic here? But I mean, just this growth is insane. We're not going to see 20% gains like we saw in 21, but I mean, last year to be 1.3 on the market of appreciation, while we moved 575 basis points in rate. Like, that's incredible. Like, we should have seen a downturn like other major markets, and we didn't.
The biggest difference I saw was essentially instead of turning in 20 to 30 days, it might have stretched to 60, and in some cases, in some markets, maybe 90 days.
Yeah.
But that's really it. There's still buyers out there. And I know there's a lot of people that think because the interest rates have gone up that it's really going to slow the market. And I'm going to date myself here. I'm old enough to remember my first house. I paid 12%, and I was excited to get that on my loan.
Right.
So even at a 7 or an 8%, it's still a good value to buy. It does create a little bit of a challenge especially for first-time home buyers. But I think there's still opportunity there, and you can still get at now. Are we going to see major appreciation like we were seeing the last 3 years? I'm not sure about that part, but I think there's still value there. So,
oh yes.
Okay. Interesting little piece that's been going on that I know you're on top of. Let's talk about the NAR lawsuit a bit. I don't want to get into the details of the suit, but I want to get your perspective on how you think it's going to affect the market. Because right now, the pundits are stipulating they think there's going to be a 30% drop in the cost of homes and all that. But I just want to kind of get what you feel like. Where do you see that going, the impact you think it's going to have?
I don't really understand where they would get that data. At the end of the day, the issue is that commissions have always been negotiable. I've made a few videos on this. Like, they always have been. It just wasn't perceived by the general public. And those I call them bad actors, which are in every business, took advantage of that. Hey, we're fixed at this. That's not true. What you pay me and what you pay the other side is completely negotiable. And I think they're just changing the way documents are written. The problem is all the clickbait that's happening.
Yes.
It drives me insane.
Yes.
Is this the end of agency? Absolutely not. It'll be the end of the bottom 30%, which I'm pretty excited about, because those people do need to go away. And it's just it's people who don't provide value, where previously marketing their services is free, which you cannot do. Those are the people that should go away. And I think, this happened when Dodd-Frank came out in 2010. For loan officers in the financial industry, just weeded out the weak. And I mean, we need that.
Well, and that's exactly my perspective on the same thing. I think at times everybody seems to say, oh, well, I'll just go be a real estate agent because it's so simple and easy. And I guess there was a day you could kind of show up and you get 3 or 4 or 5 listings. It was pretty simple, easy, but they weren't really providing value. I do think it can create a little bit of more of a burden on those first-time home buyers because there's a possibility that they will be picking up some of that. And if they're already struggling to get enough cash for their first home, now they're picking up the burden of their buyer's agent. But I do agree. I think the only big ramification is going to be is I think there's some agents that will be leaving the market. And I don't, change is not always bad. Most people feel like it is, but it's really not always bad. And I agree. I think the crux of this is maybe there were some bad people, because I've done videos too that basically states that commission has always been negotiable. Always. From the seller agent or the buyer side. It's always been negotiated. So you advise the client, here's where we're at, and tell me what you think and where you want to go. So I don't know. It will be interesting as it washes out some. I think you hit I think it's more paperwork This really is going to be for us.
I feel margin pressure will play a factor on the buyer agency side. I think that's just what's going to happen. Buyers aren't going to be able to get there. But at the end of the day, does anybody want to sell a house with seller concessions? No, but we do all the time.
Yes.
So I view it like a concession. And my biggest concern right now is how we're going to take care of veterans. That's super important to me. And right now, between NAR's code of ethics and what the VA allows, we aren't able to get there strategically yet. So that's really kind of my focus on the literature that comes out and what the VA might do. So we can still, I do not want to tell a vet, you don't have the cash. We can't get you something. I don't feel good about that.
It's a tough conversation to have, without a doubt.
Yeah. But I think there's a way. We got to see what forms look like and really what the VA is going to do. We'll find there's always a way. Just like this business. I mean, the top people are going to crush it. They'll adapt and overcome, and the weak won't, just like life.
But I think it gets back to the agents that are going to be successful in this market are truly providing a value.
Yes.
Providing value or added value, I should say, and the service.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of agents, they don't really, and this is probably my military, which I suspect plays the same way with you. We become students of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I know my markets.
Yep.
I know how I can position things that best my client or best for my client. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think you had a lot of people, oh yeah, let's go do real estate. I'll be an agent. Sure.
Show some houses and get a check.
Just show some houses and let me walk in here. Oh yeah, I'll list it. And then you've got somebody else really doing the paperwork. So I think it can be really interesting. I will say, and I probably shouldn't, I was a little frustrated that we settled, but I get the business side of that, the why. Wow. But then again, it is what it is. And so we'll adapt and overcome. I'm not saying it's a problem. It kind of just follows along what we've always been doing and what I know you've always been doing. So
I think NAR, it's tough to say, but they're laying in their own grave. That was dug by them in the sense that a lot of people have asked to raise the bar over time, raise the bar. I mean, you're selling people's largest asset. Do you know what kind of licenses you need on the finance side? We got a simple test and then I'm a real estate agent. I don't think when you're dealing, you can do that with your own assets, but when you're doing somebody else's largest asset, they saved 20, 30 years, that is insane. So I feel the bar should be raised, but NAR's not going to do that because of membership. That would hurt membership. So I think the refusal to do that is kind of, you dug that grave. I'm sorry.
No, it is what it is. And so it's going to be interesting as things finally start pushing out to the agents as for what we're supposed to be doing, the paperwork coming out of TREC for us in Texas. So anyway, you got anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. When I think people need to hear about is, I've been professionally coached now 4 years. I've watched agents come in very new and accelerate, and many of them don't. And you've really accelerated your business. So quickly from the first time I met you, I was like, you think you got it, but when you've learned really fast, you've clearly have some sort of background there, but accelerating has been quick. And how are you doing that?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I'm smart enough to know any better.
Driver.
That's it. And I think some of that's my military background. Some of that's just my personality. I want to do something. And I've always been that kid. Hey, I want to do this. Mm-hmm. And then I just start asking questions. And fortunately, I've had the benefit of someone like you who could help me. Just FYI, guys, I just had a big, long conversation with Jake over CRMs, and he gave me some great guidance. I just don't know any better. So I want it. And because I want it, I'm going to keep pushing. It's the tenacity that has kind of got me through where I grew up, I had a great family growing up. We had animals and stuff like that, but we didn't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I lived in about a 900 square foot wood framed house that literally you could see when you looked at the floor, through the knothole, you could actually see the ground under the P and beam. But I didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. But my mom always instilled in me, and my dad, work ethic. And when you want it, you just keep going till you get it. So I appreciate you asking. It's funny because I don't really think about it. It's just so innate to me.
Well, I also too think you kind of underestimate the network and relationships that you've grown before real estate too, and the fact that you have a lot of heart. You want to do right to people, and I think that's missing in some regards. So you have a strong network of people that have trusted you for a long time. And
I appreciate you saying that.
That matters.
I try to be. Just like to you, I try to be the friend to you that I hope to have. So, I want to help people. Before I was in real estate, I was in education. And of course, I retired. And that's very much a community service type.
It is, 100%.
And it fits my personality so much. All I really want to do is provide value, help people. And there's such satisfaction in doing that. And so that's really the network side of it's just kind of, and then I've stumbled on some people that help, kind of foster some of that, like you. Jake and I both are members of Veteran Circle Network, which is how I originally met Jake, which I think does such great things. And that's on the precipice of doing some even more amazing things with the city of Fort Worth. You want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's the focus of it. I'm not the founder. I've been able to run a chapter of that for a while. But Brandon Wong, since I've met him, he's always been a big proponent of growing veteran businesses. It's very easy for a group of vets to get together and complain about the VA and yada, yada. But like he's really made it like we focus on business and helping other veteran businesses. So the idea is to train them. That CRM class, everybody needs that. Get the machine to work for you, and just business principles that are positive for all veteran businesses. And that's really the purpose.
No, and it has. And so it's, we've now moved down we're meeting monthly down at the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce. And correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe jump in here. The city council or the mayor has kind of a big program she's trying to start producing, right? And really trying to target veterans to help with veteran stuff. And so they've kind of tagged the circle, right? The veteran circle is to kind of be their instructional side or their, so talk about that.
So my understanding is, we member of Vet Circles is a city councilman, and for him, Purple Heart recipient, he's a first sergeant still in the Marine Reserves, solid individual. And I think the mayor's kind of put, and I'm not putting words in her mouth, but has kind of assigned that like we want to be veteran centric, and Fort Worth has been. I mean, they're just improving that.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's they're great. That's why I love Fort Worth. But that's really is the focus, is that how can we help veterans and veteran businesses? And I think the idea is to utilize the chamber, and then us as like an education proponent to the chamber to just help them fast track and get on board and be successful.
I think it's a really cool initiative. I think there's a huge benefit there. And I agree. City of Fort Worth has been amazing. In fact, that's where we started for the longest time. That was where we were solely in Fort Worth with our investment stuff, with our flips. So in fact, I was a little leery about going someplace else because their system is so streamlined, so user friendly, and really not exceptionally cost prohibitive. Unlike some other cities, I know that can get very expensive on the per minute side, not to name names. But it's just kind of cool that you've got a large city like that at the highest positions of office there is that forward thinking.
Yeah,
and targeting, finding vehicles to help facilitate those scenarios and to help veterans. Obviously, it's very near and to our heart, but anyway, so you got anything else for us?
Well, so this is something that's not really my business focus, but it's probably a good thing to talk about is flipping. I'm generally a buy and hold person. That's kind of always been my strategy. But I mean, how do margins look on flips? Like, are they working out? Prices are way up on material. So like, how's it working?
Well, the funny thing is we didn't start off to be flippers. That's really what's funny about this. We started off as a buy and hold. That was our intent. And that first deal I did, I literally paid $30,000 for the house. I spent $70,000 on the rehab, and it was a complete gut. And we sold it at 130 and made almost 30K on it. So I'm like going, oh man, I can do this. But we started off, we didn't really have a real strong cash position when we first started off, my wife and I. And so I went to her and I said, let's do flips. Let's build our cash position so then we can get to a point where we can hold. And she's like, well, that's not what we talked about. That's not what we planned. And that's not the model. I'm like, well, follow the model of a buy and hold. We just won't hold. We'll sell. And so, it's obviously been very successful with me. Now, listen, I'll put it straight to you. If I was a baseball player, I'd be one hellacious hitter. I'm at 500%. On the investor side, 50% went, making money on 50% of your deals is probably not bad either. But it's like anything else. I jumped into this, no knowledge. I jokingly say my wife knew more about construction than I did. If you wanted me to build something, it's going to be a barn or a fence. That's all it's going to be. Yep. But she came from a construction family. And so I walked in and said, hey, this is what I want to do. And I started learning just by firsthand. The key on flipping is really making sure you understand your numbers and having the right contractors.
Important. Oh, yes.
The right contractors is huge. And that took me, the first few years really took me to a point where I finally was able, over the last 3, really have a set of contractors that I trust. To the point now we're actually expanding a little bit. We're actually doing some other people's remodels now because of the contractors I have. You kind of build it just like you would a buy and hold. Hey, this is my target margins that I want. And then you just start going after it and you keep your budgets based on that. I know being a real estate agent, I've gotten really good, obviously. Pulling ARVs after repair values for those that don't know that. And then from there, I know I don't want to be any more into a deal than a certain dollar amount, certain percentage actually. And then I just back it out from there. And so I know once I walk it, I can pretty much hit my construction number, my remodel number. And then I just go from there. And so it's been, but I will say, we just in February, we just closed on our first buy and hold.
Awesome.
So not going to cash flow a lot, but we are cash flowing. I'm super excited about that. And we've got one more remodel that we're working on that we're fixing to wrap up in probably about 3 weeks. And then I'm going to be looking, and that's another thing I've been very strategic and not to overextend.
That's very important.
The financial resources for us. My wife has very graciously allowed me to do these things. Even when I go to her, hey, we're fixing to take a loss. She's like, hey, get in, get out, let's get moving. So I've tried to be very cognitive to make sure that we don't overexpose ourselves and get to a point where if we hit a little bump, we're broke kind of thing.
Yep.
So
that's how you really lose your bacon.
Now the challenge has been we don't get to do as many during a year. But we're getting to a point now where we start accelerating and do some exponential growth. Last year we actually had 3 under contract at the same time, which still for a poor boy thinking about.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about the amount of money I owed at the time on the because we do hard money loans. That number was substantial. Now, for some other people, that number may not have been substantial, but for me and my wife, we were like, oh crap. But we got through it. We've made money. So I can't really complain. I've been very lucky.
Well, so obviously flipping and holding, 2 different strategies, but both can work, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think they're great vehicles either way, as long as we've already talked about this, as long as you manage your numbers. So, but Jake, I'm super excited. I appreciate you being here. When we started talking about doing this, you were my first guy I thought of. I wanted to get you in. You've been such an asset to me. So I really appreciate you coming in.
Sure.
That's a wrap.